It always starts the same way, not with the ending, not with the betrayal, not with the silence, but with a question that echoes long after everything falls apart. Why couldn't he love me the way I loved him? And if you've ever asked yourself that, if you've ever sat in the quiet after it all ended, replaying moments, conversations, memories, trying to find the exact place where things went wrong, then this is for you. Because the truth is, it didn't go wrong where you think it did. You didn't love too much. You didn't give too much. You didn't mess it up. But you did misunderstand one thing. And it's the thing that changes everything once you see it clearly. You were loving him from your capacity, not from his. And those two were never the same. See, when you love deeply, when you show up fully, when you are loyal, intentional, emotionally available, and willing to build something real, you assume that the person in front of you has that same depth inside of them. You assume that if they say "I love you," it means what it means when you say it. You assume that if they stay, they're staying for the same reasons you are. You assume that if they see your heart, they'll handle it with care. But love doesn't work like that. Because people don't love based on your worth. They love based on their capacity. And that's the part that hurts the most to accept. Because it would almost be easier if the reason was you. If you weren't pretty enough, or successful enough, or patient enough. At least then you could fix it. At least then you could say, if I become better, I'll finally be loved the right way. But that's not the truth. The truth is, you could have been everything. And still not have been enough for someone who lacked the capacity to love you correctly. Let that sit for a moment. He didn't fail to love you because you were hard to love. He failed to love you because he didn't know how to sustain the kind of love you were offering. And those are two completely different things. Because someone who lacks emotional depth will always feel overwhelmed by someone who has it. Someone who hasn't healed will always feel challenged by someone who has done the work. Someone who is used to surface-level connections will always struggle to meet someone who craves something real. It's not that you were too much. It's that you were too real. For someone who was only prepared for something temporary. And when you don't understand that, you start shrinking yourself. You start thinking, maybe if I ask for less, I'll get more. Maybe if I'm quieter, more patient, more understanding, less emotional, he'll finally show up the way I need him to. So you compromise. You tolerate. You excuse. You explain away things your intuition has been screaming about from the beginning. Because somewhere deep down, you're not just trying to be loved. You're trying to be chosen. But here's the truth no one tells you. Being chosen by someone who cannot love you properly is not a win. It's a slow heartbreak. It's waking up next to someone who is there physically, but absent emotionally. It's explaining your feelings over and over again, and still feeling misunderstood. It's loving someone who benefits from your presence, but never fully pours back into you. And over time, it drains you. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly, piece by piece. Until one day you look up and realize you've been pouring into someone who never had the capacity to pour into you. And then comes the second question. The one that's even harder. Why did I stay? And that answer is layered. You stayed because you saw potential. You stayed because of the good moments. You stayed because you believed that love could grow. You stayed because you thought patience would turn into progress. You stayed because you loved him. And love, real love, makes you hopeful. But here's the shift that changes everything. Potential is not a promise. Just because someone could be better, doesn't mean they will be. Just because you see who they could become, doesn't mean they're willing to become it. And just because you love someone, doesn't mean they are capable of loving you back in the way you deserve. That's not bitterness. That's clarity. Because love requires more than feelings. It requires emotional maturity. It requires accountability. It requires consistency. It requires presence. And if someone is missing those things, no amount of your love can fill in those gaps. You cannot love someone into becoming who you need them to be. You can support growth, but you cannot force it. You can inspire change, but you cannot demand it. And most importantly, you cannot sacrifice yourself waiting for it. Because while you're waiting for them to grow, you're shrinking. While you're giving them grace, you're abandoning your own needs. While you're hoping they'll change, you're ignoring what's already been shown to you. And that's where the real heartbreak lives. Not just in what they did or didn't do, but in the realization that you stayed in something that wasn't aligned with you, because you believed it could become something it never actually was. But here's the part that brings your power back. You didn't stay because you were weak. You stayed because you were loving. You stayed because you were loyal. You stayed because you believed in something real. And those are not flaws. Those are strengths. But those strengths, when placed in the wrong hands, become wounds. And that's why healing isn't about becoming cold or detached. It's about becoming discerning. It's about learning the difference between someone who is capable of love and someone who simply enjoys being loved. Because those are not the same. Someone who is capable of love will meet you halfway. They will listen. They will grow. They will take accountability. They will care about how they affect you. But someone who only enjoys being loved will take. They will receive. They will benefit from your presence. But they will not match your effort. They will not hold themselves accountable. They will not stretch beyond their comfort zone to meet your needs. And that's the difference you have to start recognizing early. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's where your fearlessness begins. Because healing isn't just about letting go of them. It's about letting go of the version of you who thought you had to overextend yourself to be loved. It's about releasing the belief that love requires struggle. It's about understanding that the right love will not confuse you, drain you, or make you question your worth. And I know, part of you still wonders, what if I had just done things differently? What if I had been more patient? What if I had loved him better? But let's be honest for a moment. You already gave your best. You already tried. You already showed up. And if your best wasn't enough, it's not because your best was lacking. It's because it was being given to someone who couldn't receive it properly. That's not a reflection of your worth. That's a reflection of their limitations. And once you accept that, something inside of you shifts. Because you stop chasing answers that don't exist. You stop trying to decode someone who was never consistent. You stop blaming yourself for someone else's inability to love. And you start returning back to yourself. Slowly. Gently. But intentionally. You start remembering who you were before you started questioning yourself. Before you started overanalyzing everything. Before you started settling for less than what you needed. And in that remembering, you rebuild. Not the version of you that was in that relationship, but a stronger, wiser, more grounded version of yourself. A version of you that still loves deeply, but no longer ignores red flags. A version of you that still gives, but only to those who reciprocate. A version of you that understands that love is not something you have to fight for. It's something that flows when it's aligned. And here's the truth that sets you free. He couldn't love you the way you loved him, not because you were unlovable, but because he was unequipped. Unequipped emotionally, unequipped mentally, unequipped in the ways that matter when it comes to sustaining real, healthy, consistent love. And you were already operating at a level he hadn't reached yet. And maybe he never will. But that's no longer your responsibility. Your responsibility is you. Your healing, your growth, your peace, your future. Because the love you're looking for, the love that feels safe, consistent, intentional, and real, it exists. But it requires you to stop settling for anything less. It requires you to walk away from what doesn't align, even when it's hard. It requires you to trust that being alone is better than being with someone who makes you feel alone. And most importantly, it requires you to believe that the way you love is not a weakness. It's a gift, just not for everyone. So don't dim it. Don't suppress it. Don't convince yourself to love less, just because someone couldn't meet you there. Instead, refine it, protect it, and learn to give it only to those who have shown you they are capable of holding it. Because the next chapter of your life isn't about proving your worth to someone who couldn't see it. It's about embodying it so fully that anything less than what you deserve feels uncomfortable. And when that happens, you won't ask, why couldn't he love me the way I loved him? You'll say with clarity and peace, I finally understand. He wasn't capable, and I'm no longer available for that. And that is where your freedom begins. If this message spoke to you, if you've ever questioned your worth because someone couldn't love you right, I want you to hear this clearly. It was never about your worth. Your ability to love deeply is not your weakness. It's your power. You just gave it to someone who didn't know how to hold it. If you're on your healing journey, I want you to be in a space where you're reminded of your strength daily. So make sure you subscribe to this channel, because this is where we rebuild, this is where we grow, and this is where you come back home to yourself. And if this message helped you, share it with another woman who needs to hear this. You never know who's silently struggling. Also, I've created something special for you, tools to help you truly let go, heal, and rebuild your life. Check the link in the description. If this message spoke to you, if you've ever questioned your worth because someone couldn't love you right, I want you to hear this clearly. It was never about your worth. Your ability to love deeply is not your weakness. It's your power. You just gave it to someone who didn't know how to hold it. If you're on your healing journey, I want you to be in a space where you're reminded of your strength daily. So make sure you subscribe to this channel, because this is where we rebuild, this is where we grow, and this is where you come back home to yourself. And if this message helped you, share it with another woman who needs to hear this. You never know who's silently struggling. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching.